Welcome to Success Lore, where the untold stories of wealth and success come alive. Get ready to dive into the lives of the world's most inspiring people and uncover the secrets behind their legendary journeys.
Mark Elliott Zuckerberg was born on May 14, 1984, in White Plains, New York. Raised in nearby Dobbs Ferry, he was the second of four children in a supportive upper-middle-class family. His father, Edward Zuckerberg, was a dentist, and his mother, Karen, worked as a psychiatrist before leaving her profession to focus on raising their children. From an early age, Mark demonstrated a sharp intellect and an unusual fascination with computers and programming. At just 10 years old, Mark received his first computer, a Quantex 486DX. His father noticed his curiosity and encouraged it, even hiring a private computer tutor named David Newman. Newman later said that Mark was a prodigy and that it quickly became clear he was dealing with someone exceptional. Rather than playing games, Mark wanted to build them. He started writing simple computer programs and developed communication tools to make his father's dental office more efficient, most notably a messaging system called ZuckNet that predated mainstream instant messaging platforms. Mark's interests extended beyond tech. He was also fluent in Latin, showed an early passion for classical literature, and excelled in fencing, becoming the captain of his high school team. But while he thrived in many areas, it was coding where his true potential revealed itself. By the time he entered Phillips Exeter Academy, one of the top prep schools in the country, he was already developing projects that drew serious attention. One of these was a music program he called Synapse Media Player. Built during his high school years, Synapse used machine learning to analyze users' listening habits and recommend songs, a concept strikingly ahead of its time. The project gained national media attention, and companies like Microsoft and AOL reportedly tried to acquire it and recruit Zuckerberg before he had even graduated. He declined. Instead, Mark chose to enroll at Harvard University in 2002. He planned to study psychology and computer science, and he would go on to join Alpha Epsilon Pi, a Jewish fraternity. It was here that the pieces began to align, not just academically, but socially and technically, for what would become one of the most consequential ventures in the digital age. By his sophomore year, Zuckerberg had already earned a reputation on campus as a gifted programmer. His name started circulating within Harvard's tech-savvy circles. Then, in the winter of 2003, an idea struck him, one that would change the world forever. But before that idea could take shape, he launched something far more controversial, something that would ignite debates on ethics, privacy, and ambition, and nearly got him expelled. It was October 2003 when Mark Zuckerberg, sitting alone in his Harvard dorm room, launched a website called FaceMash. Using photos scraped without permission from the university's internal student directories, Mark built a site that allowed users to compare the attractiveness of fellow students by choosing between two faces. The site went viral within hours. Over 22,000 photo views and hundreds of users flooded the platform in just a few days. But the fallout came fast. University officials swiftly shut it down, citing violations of privacy and security. Mark was summoned by the Harvard's administrative board and faced disciplinary action. He narrowly avoided expulsion, but the incident made him notorious on campus. For some, it was a cautionary tale. For others, a bold demonstration of his talent and disregard for limits. Despite the controversy, the buzz around FaceMash revealed something deeper, a hunger for digital connection. Harvard students were already used to browsing through printed Facebooks, which contained pictures and bios of other students, but there was no central online hub to connect everyone. That gap sparked Mark's next, much bigger idea. By early 2004, Zuckerberg had been developing a site that would bring the physical Facebook concept to the web. He started coding feverishly, often pulling all-nighters with his roommate Dustin Moskovitz and friends Chris Hughes and Eduardo Saverin, who would later become co-founders. On February 4, 2004, the Facebook officially launched, a simple, blue-and-white website available only to Harvard students. The response was instant and explosive. Within 24 hours, over 1,000 students had signed up. The exclusivity and clean interface appealed to students used to clunky early social platforms like Friendster and MySpace. Users could set up profiles, add friends, and post messages, features that now seem basic but were revolutionary in their simplicity and social appeal. Soon after, students at Yale, Columbia, and Stanford began requesting access. Within a few months, the Facebook expanded to over 30 colleges. Mark realized he was sitting on something far bigger than a college project. But not everyone saw him as a visionary. Just days after launching the Facebook, 3 Harvard seniors, Cameron Winklevoss, Tyler Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra, accused Mark of stealing their idea. They claimed he had agreed to help them build a site called Harvard Connection, later rebranded as ConnectU, but had instead used their concept to build his own. This was more than a dispute among classmates. It was the beginning of a legal battle that would haunt Zuckerberg for years. And as the Facebook grew beyond the Ivy League, the pressure mounted, from lawsuits, from competitors, and from within his own team. Then, in the summer of 2004, a decision was made that would take Zuckerberg out of college and into Silicon Valley. In the summer of 2004, Mark Zuckerberg made a pivotal decision. He packed up and left Harvard to move to Palo Alto, California, the beating heart of the tech world. It wasn't a formal dropout yet. He intended to take time off to focus on the Facebook during the summer, but he never returned. That summer changed everything. He rented a modest house on 819 La Genève Way, which quickly transformed into the company's first unofficial headquarters. It was a chaotic environment, part startup war room, part hacker haven. Cables snaked across the floor, whiteboards were covered in code and strategy notes, and engineers worked around the clock. There was no hierarchy, no structure, just an obsession with building and scaling the platform. One of the most important early hires during that summer was a young, brash tech entrepreneur named Sean Parker, best known as the co-founder of Napster. Parker discovered the Facebook through his girlfriend's Stanford network and was immediately captivated. He reached out to Mark, met with him in person, and quickly became the company's first president. His experience and Silicon Valley connections were invaluable. It was Parker who convinced Mark to drop the from the name, making it just Facebook. He also introduced Mark to key investors. By late 2004, Facebook had attracted its first major outside funding, a $500,000 investment from Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal. It was a turning point. With Thiel's support and Parker's guidance, Facebook began to grow into something far more structured and ambitious. The platform expanded beyond colleges to include high schools, then gradually opened up to a wider audience. Its user base swelled, doubling every few months. But the internal dynamics of the founding team began to shift. Eduardo Saverin, who had originally been Facebook's CFO and business manager, was still in New York trying to secure advertising deals. Meanwhile, Zuckerberg in California was making major strategic and financial decisions without him. Their relationship deteriorated. Saverin felt sidelined and frozen out. Eduardo, on the other hand, believed Saverin was holding the company back. This tension led to one of the most controversial moments in Facebook's history. Mark and his legal team diluted Saverin's shares in the company, essentially pushing him out. Saverin filed a lawsuit which was eventually settled out of court. Though the terms were never publicly disclosed, Saverin was acknowledged as a co-founder and reportedly received a settlement worth hundreds of millions of dollars. At the same time, the lawsuit from the Winklevoss twins and Divya Narendra over the origin of Facebook was intensifying. The ConnectU founders were relentless, accusing Mark of intellectual theft and demanding compensation. By early 2007, Facebook was no longer just a college networking site. It was rapidly evolving into a global platform. But while growth was steady, the company hadn't yet cracked the code on profitability or long-term direction. Questions loomed. Could Facebook compete with the likes of MySpace? Could it scale responsibly? Would the lawsuits damage Mark's credibility? And just as Facebook was gaining momentum, an unexpected opportunity arrived, a chance to cash out early. A tech giant came knocking. In 2006, Facebook was on a trajectory that few startups ever experience. It had millions of active users, and growth was accelerating every month, but it still wasn't profitable, and its long-term sustainability wasn't guaranteed. That's when Yahoo entered the picture. Yahoo, then one of the largest internet companies, offered to acquire Facebook for a staggering $1 billion. For a company barely 2 years old, with no clear revenue model, the offer was more than generous. Facebook's board and several of its earliest investors, including some of its earliest investors, urged Zuckerberg to accept. It was a life-changing sum, but Mark refused. Despite intense pressure, Zuckerberg believed Facebook was still in its infancy. He wasn't building it for a quick payday. He had a vision: to turn Facebook into the world's most essential online social platform. In his mind, selling now would be like selling a kid's science project before it turned into a rocket ship. His stubbornness frustrated many inside the company, but it also solidified his control and clarified his long-term ambition.
Just months after turning down the Yahoo deal, Facebook launched one of its most pivotal and initially controversial features, the News Feed. Introduced in September 2006, News Feed aggregated friends' updates into a single real-time stream. Before this, users had to visit individual profiles to see what others were doing. It was a massive change in how people interacted online. But the reaction was immediate and harsh. Users were outraged. Petitions circulated, accusing Facebook of violating privacy and exposing people's personal activity without consent. Protests spread across the platform, with hundreds of thousands threatening to delete their accounts. Zuckerberg responded with a public apology, but he didn't back down from the feature itself. Instead, he and his team quickly implemented stronger privacy controls, allowing users more say over what was visible. In time, News Feed became the heartbeat of Facebook, driving engagement, retention, and time on site, and laying the foundation for its future advertising engine. As Facebook crossed 12 million users in 2006 and opened registration to the general public, it became clear this wasn't just a college trend anymore. But as the platform matured, so did its competitors. MySpace was still dominant in the U.S. social networking market, and new platforms like Twitter were emerging. Facebook needed to evolve fast. It had to become more than a profile-based directory. It had to become a platform. And in 2007, Zuckerberg made a bold move to do just that. He opened Facebook to third-party developers with the launch of the Facebook platform. This allowed anyone to build apps and services on top of Facebook, tapping into its social graph and growing user base. Suddenly, Facebook was no longer just a website. It was an ecosystem. And it worked. Games like Farmville and apps like Causes exploded in popularity, drawing millions of users and cementing Facebook's dominance in the social web. But even as the company reached new heights, including being valued at over $15 billion after a strategic investment from Microsoft, one internal issue would soon challenge Zuckerberg's leadership more than any lawsuit ever had: Sean Parker. In 2005, Parker had been instrumental in Facebook's early success, but his fast lifestyle and controversial behavior started to raise eyebrows among investors. Then, in 2006, Parker was arrested for drug possession, though no charges were filed. It was the final straw. Zuckerberg had to make a painful decision, and that decision would reshape Facebook's executive leadership for years to come. Sean Parker's departure from Facebook in 2006 marked the end of an era and the beginning of a more disciplined, business-focused phase for the company. Parker had played a crucial role in Facebook's rise, but his erratic behavior and public drug-related incident had alarmed investors. Zuckerberg, after consulting with the board, accepted Parker's resignation. It was bittersweet. Parker had been more than a mentor. He was one of Zuckerberg's closest allies in the company's formative years. But with Facebook maturing, it needed stability, structure, and experience at the executive level. Mark was only 22, leading a company valued in the billions. The pressure was enormous, and he knew he couldn't do it alone. In 2008, Zuckerberg made a critical hire. Sheryl Sandberg, then a top executive at Google, joined Facebook as its chief operating officer. Sandberg brought a deep understanding of advertising, operations, and corporate leadership, all areas in which Facebook was still relatively inexperienced. Their partnership would become one of the most significant in Silicon Valley history. Sandberg's arrival marked a turning point. She spearheaded the development of Facebook's monetization strategy, focusing on targeted ads powered by Facebook's vast troves of user data. This would evolve into Facebook Ads, a self-serve platform that would become the company's financial backbone. The precision and scale of Facebook's ad targeting quickly set it apart from competitors, and revenue began to soar. Meanwhile, Facebook's user base kept growing. It hit 100 million users by the end of 2008. Then 200 million just months later. Its clean design, real identity policy, and intuitive interface helped it outpace rivals like MySpace, which was now in steep decline under News Corp's ownership. Facebook had become the dominant force in the social networking space. But the company was now facing a new kind of scrutiny, one that came not from competitors or legal rivals, but from the public and the press. As the platform's reach expanded, concerns about data privacy, user control, and content moderation began to surface. The 2009 redesign of the homepage, more changes to the newsfeed, and the increasing prominence of advertising raised questions about whether Facebook was prioritizing profit over user experience. Zuckerberg, still in his early 20s, now had to manage more than just a growing business. He was becoming the face of a global platform that touched nearly every aspect of modern life. And as Facebook reached 500 million users by 2010, it no longer felt like a startup. It felt like a government. That same year, Hollywood came knocking. The Social Network, a dramatized film based on Facebook's early days, was released in October 2010. Directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, the film portrayed Zuckerberg as brilliant but socially cold, a loner who allegedly betrayed friends to get ahead. Mark dismissed the film's accuracy, but acknowledged that they got the clothes right. Still, the movie cast a long shadow. It reinforced narratives about Zuckerberg's ambition, his legal battles, and his personal relationships. The public began seeing Facebook and its founder in a new, more complicated light. Despite the media noise, Facebook kept building. By 2011, it was clear the company was gearing up for something monumental, the most highly anticipated tech IPO since Google. But going public would mean more than just raising capital. It would mean subjecting Facebook to Wall Street scrutiny, regulatory oversight, and shareholder expectations. Mark would have to convince the world again that he could lead a now global corporation into the next phase of growth. And he would do it on his own terms, starting with an IPO that broke records and nearly broke the company. In February 2012, Mark Zuckerberg made it official. Facebook had filed for an initial public offering. The company was now preparing to open its books to the world, and investors lined up with enormous anticipation. With over 845 million users, Facebook was the largest social network on Earth. Its valuation, an eye-popping $104 billion, making it the biggest tech IPO in history at the time. But there was skepticism, too. While Facebook had built a massive user base, its mobile strategy was still uncertain. The majority of users were shifting to smartphones, but Facebook hadn't yet cracked the mobile experience. Advertisers, too, were slow to move money into mobile ads. Analysts questioned whether Facebook could maintain its growth or even justify its massive valuation. Behind the excitement, pressure was mounting. On May 18, 2012, Facebook went public on the Nasdaq, under the ticker symbol FB. The offering raised $16 billion, making it the third largest IPO in U.S. history. Zuckerberg, wearing his signature hoodie, rang the opening bell remotely from Facebook's headquarters. But the first day of trading didn't go as planned. Technical glitches plagued the Nasdaq exchange, delaying orders and confusing investors. The stock opened at $38, but barely rose. By the end of the first day, Facebook's stock closed just above the IPO price, a disappointment. In the following weeks, the stock tumbled. dropping to below $20. Critics pounced. Some called it one of the most overhyped IPOs ever. Others questioned whether Zuckerberg, now CEO of a public company, was truly ready for the responsibilities of running a giant corporation. Internally, morale took a hit. Employees who had waited years for a lucrative payday saw the value of their shares plummet. But Zuckerberg remained steady. He continued to invest heavily in product development, engineering talent, and a long-term mobile-first strategy. He believed Facebook's value wasn't in ad revenue alone, it was in its platform and its people. Then came the turning point. In April 2012, just a month before the IPO, Facebook had made a surprising move. It acquired Instagram for $1 billion. At the time, Instagram was a small, 13-person startup with a growing base of 30 million users. Critics thought Facebook had overpaid. But Zuckerberg saw something others didn't. He promised Instagram's founders Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger that the app would remain independent. No Facebook branding, no forced integration. It was a bold, founder-friendly acquisition and a masterstroke. Instagram's mobile-native design, photo-sharing appeal, and growing cultural cachet made it the ideal complement to Facebook's desktop-heavy experience. While the media focused on the IPO stumble, Facebook's real transformation was already underway, one centered around mobile dominance. Within a year, the company had rebuilt its mobile apps from the ground up, rolled out mobile advertising, and seen mobile usage overtake desktop. By 2013, more than half of Facebook's ad revenue came from mobile. The stock rebounded and began to soar. The lesson was clear. Zuckerberg could play the long game, and he wasn't afraid to make unpopular or risky decisions in the short term to ensure Facebook's dominance in the future. But with new power came new challenges. As Facebook became one of the most powerful communication tools on Earth, it began to face issues that no tech company had ever faced before.
Election interference, fake news, data misuse, and questions about the limits of digital influence. And then came a scandal that would shake Facebook to its core and drag Zuckerberg into the global spotlight like never before. Cambridge Analytica. In early 2018, a scandal erupted that would forever change how the world viewed Facebook. At the center of it was a little-known political consulting firm called Cambridge Analytica, and their unauthorized access to data from over 87 million Facebook users. The story, first broken by The Guardian and The New York Times, revealed that Cambridge Analytica had harvested personal data via a personality quiz app, then used that data to build detailed psychological profiles of American voters. These profiles were allegedly used to influence political campaigns, including the 2016 U.S. presidential election and the Brexit referendum. The most damning part, Facebook had known about the data misuse years earlier, but failed to take decisive action. Instead of warning users or notifying regulators, Facebook quietly asked Cambridge Analytica to delete the data, and took their word that it had been done. When the full extent of the scandal became public trust in Facebook plummeted. Lawmakers, regulators, and users around the world demanded answers. Mark Zuckerberg, usually press-shy and carefully managed, was called to testify before Congress in April 2018. It was an extraordinary moment. The CEO of one of the world's most powerful tech companies sat before lawmakers for 10 hours over 2 days, defending Facebook's actions, explaining how the platform worked, and fielding questions about data privacy, algorithmic influence, and user control. He wore a suit, a rare departure from his trademark hoodie, and opened with a calm but firm statement: "We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake." The hearings revealed a broader problem. Most lawmakers didn't fully understand how Facebook operated. Their questions ranged from insightful to confused. Still, Zuckerberg's appearance signaled a turning point, not just for Facebook, but for the entire tech industry. For the first time, major platforms were being held accountable not just as businesses, but as institutions with societal responsibilities. The fallout from Cambridge Analytica was severe. Facebook lost more than $100 billion in market value in just a few days. User trust was eroded. Movements like #DeleteFacebook gained traction. The company faced investigations from the FTC, EU, and multiple national governments. Eventually, Facebook was fined $5 billion by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, the largest penalty ever levied for privacy violations at the time. But even as the scandal rocked Facebook, the company was already pivoting. Zuckerberg launched a major campaign to rebuild trust, improve transparency, and rethink the platform's priorities. Facebook redesigned its privacy tools, tightened access to user data, and increased investment in content moderation, hiring tens of thousands of reviewers worldwide. Internally, Zuckerberg became more philosophical. He published lengthy blog posts outlining a shift toward privacy-focused communication, emphasizing encryption, small group messaging, and interoperability between platforms like Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram. This wasn't just a PR move. It was a strategic transformation aimed at addressing both user concerns and rising regulatory pressure. Despite everything, Facebook's growth didn't stop. By the end of 2019, it had over 2.5 billion monthly active users, and its ad revenue continued to soar. Instagram, now fully integrated into Facebook's strategy, had become a cultural phenomenon, particularly among younger audiences. But Mark Zuckerberg was no longer just a young tech founder. He was now a symbol of tech's unchecked power. And as the 2020 U.S. election approached, Facebook would once again find itself at the center of a global firestorm, one involving misinformation, civil unrest, and the fragile state of democracy itself. As the world entered 2020, Mark Zuckerberg found himself under a level of scrutiny no tech CEO had faced before. Facebook had become a central arena for political discourse, public debate, and, unfortunately, the spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories. The company was still reeling from the Cambridge Analytica scandal, but the upcoming U.S. presidential election, the COVID-19 pandemic, and growing global distrust in social platforms created the perfect storm. Facebook was no longer just a place to share photos and stay connected. It had become a political battlefield, and the pressure on Zuckerberg to act decisively was immense. Early in the pandemic, Facebook responded quickly by partnering with health organizations to promote accurate information about COVID-19. It launched a COVID Information Center, removed harmful falsehoods, and displayed banners linking to the World Health Organization. These efforts helped millions access reliable health data, but they also exposed how easily misinformation could spread and how difficult it was to keep up. At the same time, Facebook was facing internal dissent. A major controversy erupted in mid-2020 when Donald Trump, then U.S. president, posted messages that many interpreted as inciting violence during nationwide protests over racial injustice. Twitter flagged the posts. Facebook, by contrast, left them untouched. Zuckerberg defended the decision, citing a commitment to free speech, but internally, the backlash was fierce. Dozens of employees staged a virtual walkout. Former staff and civil rights groups accused Facebook of enabling hate speech and political manipulation. Zuckerberg stood firm, but the pressure was growing. By then, Facebook had become too big to operate without ideological impact. Its policies on political advertising, content moderation, and algorithmic amplification could sway public opinion and influence elections. To address the rising tension, Zuckerberg launched the Facebook Oversight Board, an independent body meant to review controversial moderation decisions, often referred to as Facebook's Supreme Court. The board was an attempt to offload some of the ethical burden, but critics questioned its independence and authority. Then came Election Day 2020. Facebook rolled out unprecedented measures. It halted new political ads in the final week, placed warning labels on false claims, and throttled the reach of election-related misinformation. After Joe Biden's victory, the platform was flooded with unverified allegations of voter fraud. Facebook acted faster than in 2016, but damage had already been done. The climax arrived on January 6, 2021,
when the U.S. Capitol was attacked by a pro-Trump mob, many of whom had organized and mobilized via Facebook and other platforms. The aftermath was a reckoning. Zuckerberg made a stunning move. He suspended Donald Trump's Facebook account indefinitely, citing risks of further violence. It was the first time Facebook had banned a sitting head of state. This action drew both praise and condemnation. Some saw it as a necessary step toward accountability. Others called it censorship. But for Zuckerberg, it marked a definitive turning point in how Facebook would approach platform responsibility. Internally, another transformation was already underway. Zuckerberg was beginning to feel that the original version of Facebook, the flat, newsfeed-centered social network, had reached its peak. He started shifting focus to a broader vision, one that looked far beyond social media. In late 2021, Mark Zuckerberg shocked the tech world again by announcing a bold rebrand. Facebook Inc. would now be called Meta Platforms Inc., a pivot signaling his ambition to build the metaverse, a fully immersive digital world where people could work, play, and interact through virtual and augmented reality. It was a radical bet on the future. But with it came risk, enormous investment, and fresh waves of skepticism. Critics questioned the timing. Was this a distraction from Facebook's controversies or a genuine next chapter? And as Meta poured billions of dollars into developing this new vision, one thing became clear. Zuckerberg was once again betting the company's future on a long-term dream, just like he had with Facebook in a Harvard dorm nearly 2 decades earlier. But could he do it again? By 2022, Mark Zuckerberg had firmly shifted the spotlight from Facebook to Meta, ushering in a bold new era focused on the metaverse, a vision of interconnected virtual environments where people could live digital lives in ways more immersive than anything the internet had previously offered. To back that vision up, Meta began investing heavily. The company restructured, combining its apps, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger under one division, while funneling billions into a new unit called Reality Labs, dedicated to building the hardware and software of the metaverse. That included products like the Meta Quest VR headsets, augmented reality glasses, and virtual social platforms like Horizon Worlds. But Wall Street wasn't convinced. The investments were enormous, over $10 billion per year, and the metaverse remained largely conceptual. Adoption was slow. Horizon Worlds struggled with user engagement. VR still felt niche, and the broader tech community viewed Zuckerberg's pivot as overly ambitious, even tone-deaf to immediate realities. Meanwhile, Meta's core business, advertising on Facebook and Instagram, was facing growing threats. Apple's App Tracking Transparency feature, launched in 2021, limited how apps could track user behavior across iPhones. This struck at the heart of Meta's targeted ad business, costing the company billions in lost revenue. Competition from TikTok was also intensifying, drawing away younger users and reshaping online content consumption through short-form video. By the end of 2022, Meta's stock had plummeted more than 70% from its peak, wiping out hundreds of billions in market value. Public perception soured. Some analysts began openly questioning whether Zuckerberg had lost touch with what users actually wanted. In response, Zuckerberg doubled down on a theme he hadn't used in years: efficiency. In early 2023, he announced that Meta would enter its Year of Efficiency. The company laid off over 20,000 employees across multiple rounds, marking some of the largest tech layoffs in history. Entire departments were restructured or dissolved. It was a painful transition, but Zuckerberg insisted it was necessary to make Meta leaner, faster, and more focused. At the same time, Zuckerberg quietly began reclaiming some of the momentum he had lost. Instagram launched Reels to counter TikTok, and by mid-2023, Reels was seeing explosive growth, especially in India, Brazil, and the US. Facebook remained one of the most downloaded apps worldwide, defying predictions of its decline. WhatsApp was growing rapidly in regions like Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, and monetization efforts through WhatsApp Business were gaining traction.
Even Reality Labs, though still deeply unprofitable, was showing technical progress. Meta's Quest 3 headset was released with improved mixed reality capabilities, and early developer demos showed glimpses of the immersive experiences Zuckerberg had envisioned. At the same time, Meta was pouring resources into AI development, integrating recommendation algorithms and generative AI into its apps, and preparing to compete with emerging AI platforms like OpenAI. Zuckerberg, long criticized for being reactive, was now seen as calm, focused, and relentless. In interviews, he reflected on how past challenges, from the early lawsuits to Cambridge Analytica, had taught him resilience. He embraced personal transformation too, training in mixed martial arts, publicly sharing his interest in fitness and discipline. It was a reinvention, not just of Meta, but of Zuckerberg himself. By the close of 2023, Meta had recovered much of its lost stock value. The company was again profitable, leaner, and still dominant across multiple platforms. Zuckerberg was no longer the 19-year-old college dropout who launched a social site in his dorm. He was now the CEO of one of the most complex technology companies on Earth, managing products used by over 3 billion people every month. And yet, the biggest question still hung in the air. Would the metaverse, his most ambitious and expensive vision yet, ever become real? Or would it go down as one of the boldest miscalculations in tech history? The answer Zuckerberg knew would lie in the years ahead. But another transformative shift was already beginning, one that could define the next era of Meta even more than the metaverse: artificial intelligence. As the tech world entered 2024, the spotlight began to shift from the metaverse to artificial intelligence. While companies like OpenAI, Google, and Microsoft raced to dominate the generative AI space, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta were quietly preparing a massive play of their own. AI had always been integral to Facebook, powering its recommendation algorithms, spam filters, and ad targeting. But now, Zuckerberg saw an opportunity to compete at the foundational level, to build Meta's own large language models, and to integrate AI deeply across all products: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and even future virtual reality systems. In a bold move, Meta open-sourced LLMAA, its family of powerful large language models, signaling a clear strategy. Instead of locking AI behind corporate APIs, Meta would empower developers worldwide to build on top of its models. This was a calculated challenge to OpenAI's closed model with ChatGPT, and a reaffirmation of Zuckerberg's long-standing belief in the open web. AI became the company's new North Star. Instagram and Facebook began rolling out AI-powered creation tools, allowing users to generate images, stylize posts, and interact with chat-based assistants. WhatsApp and Messenger introduced AI chatbots, with personalities ranging from customer service agents to creative companions. In the background, Meta was weaving AI into every part of its infrastructure, from content moderation to real-time translation to digital commerce. Zuckerberg didn't abandon the metaverse. In fact, he began to speak of AI and the metaverse as intertwined. AI would power more intelligent, responsive virtual environments, and generative tools would allow users to create immersive spaces far more easily. But the narrative had changed. Instead of one long-shot moonshot, Meta now had multiple parallel bets on the future. Meanwhile, the company's fundamentals remained strong. Meta closed 2024 with record revenue, powered by a resurgence in ad sales, growth in Reels, and emerging monetization from WhatsApp. Its platforms were still among the most used on Earth, and for the first time in years, public perception of Zuckerberg seemed to shift, not back to the starry-eyed genius of the 2000s, but to a hardened, battle-tested leader who had endured crisis after crisis and still refused to quit. The journey hadn't been smooth. He'd been sued, mocked, vilified, and underestimated. But through it all, Zuckerberg had retained control of his company thanks to his dual-class share structure, and had taken enormous risks to reinvent it, not once, but multiple times. Today, Mark Zuckerberg is more than the founder of Facebook. He's the CEO of Meta, a company shaping the future of social connection, virtual reality, digital identity, and now, artificial intelligence. Whether or not the metaverse becomes the new internet or AI transforms every aspect of human life, one thing is clear: Mark Zuckerberg has never stopped building.